I think the way that we tend to think of self-interest is all wrong because generally when people are describing self-interest as a goal or the reason why they do the things they do, it's often meant to justify why, like why you're doing things that would generally be considered bad in the eyes of most people morally. But I think self-interest goes beyond that. It isn't just what is directly being done. It isn't just a sort of a means to an end, in the most simple way that we could explain it. It's also about self-conception. That if, for example, you have things that you do that would be considered by the community to be good, that are considered, broadly at a societal level and as well as by yourself to be good because of how much work you have to put in, because of how much of yourself you have to put in, because of how much of your time you have to sacrifice, etc. And as a result, most people wouldn't do that. Those you would be considered a self-sacrificing person. But the truth of the matter is that you're not really self-sacrificing. You simply prefer a conception of yourself as someone who does that duty, as someone who does the right thing. You prefer the idea, the image of yourself as the person who does those arduous tasks. And while they may be difficult in the moment, while you may use that abstract reasoning to make yourself believe that these are not things that you would like to do because they are difficult, at the end of the day you're doing them. And you have to be doing them for a reason beyond some abstract sense of morality. You're doing them because they contribute as a whole to your identity. You do them because they contribute to your self-conception. That without doing those things, you would feel worse. Your self-conception would feel worse. It wouldn't be the same. So, it is sort of a loaded term to say that everyone is an egoist because, again, the connotations that egoism has with people who do things that are generally considered to be immoral or advocate for systems that a lot of people just find gross at a base level. Egoism is not an excuse for not doing things. Egoism is simply an explanation for why anyone does anything. That you see some what is the word? I can't fucking speak today. You see a morally conscious action that's building towards a better world, or you see someone thinking beyond their years, and it is not because they're out of principle or out of self-control, etc., doing those things, psyching themselves up to make them into existence, out of some, abstract, broad sense of self-sacrifice. It is part of who they are. That those things would not come into being if they were not the person who would do that. That those things would not come into being if the cost-benefit analysis did not ultimately benefit them more in the long run by having done those things. Everyone is an egoist. It's just a matter of how, or why. But it's a loaded term. It's a term that has a lot of baggage to it, so it's preferable not to use it because as soon as people hear it, they're going to think of things that aren't, that aren't necessarily it. It's just a matter of self-interest. That ultimately what you desire, you're going to do. If you didn't desire it, you would not be doing it. And so, like, a lot of people desire suffering, for example. This is something that's rarely talked about. I don't know how more people haven't caught on to this, is that a lot of people want to suffer. And so they do things that intentionally put themselves in that situation, either consciously or subconsciously, in order to suffer. A lot of people want to. And so, sometimes it's a part of your self-conception. And as a result of having not doing it, it damages that sense, which damages your sense of meaning, etc. Sometimes it's something that gives you a more direct sense of pleasure in the moment, and other times it's just a subconscious cost benefit analysis that's related to any number of these things, if not all of them. And I could go on and on. The basic point I'm trying to make here is that everyone is operating on their self-interest on some level. Whatever you do is you're doing it because you desire to do so. And so the idea that there's some sort of moral superiority in cutting off your desires, in not doing the things that you quote unquote want to do. You're not really doing that. If you're out there saying that and then acting in another way, you're not doing that, because your identity and your self-conception is based around not doing those things. You simply believe that you want to do those other things, but if you truly wanted to do them, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing right now. And so you're lifting yourself up in the face of other people through these highly abstract pieces of reasoning that go beyond what the core point is. What the very basic point is that I think anyone should be able to recognize, that if it's being done, it's being desired.